Hi there guys, I received a very interesting email earlier from someone who's undertaking a project and wanted me to, that the person's name is liddlejenuk, that's their username, and they wanted me to answer some questions for a project they've been doing, which is on women's views on sex offenders. And they have some questions that they wanted me and mostly other women to answer. And it kind of carries on from last year. In the UK there was a documentary called The Castration Cure, which was on several different possible methods to reduce or remove testosterone from the bodies of sex offenders by castration, either surgical or medical chemical. So what she's doing is that she's canvassing video responses from women of all ages that will link with the blog when she finally has enough responses to warrant it. So she's going to put all of this on a blog. And she says, I think it is a subject of tremendous importance and women's voices should be heard. So I did a little bit of research before doing this. One scientific paper that I read all the way through, and another one was basically a summary, like a news report, which had a summary and mentioned a couple of different studies to bring in sort of a couple of different perspectives on the issue, because I mean I'm no expert, am I? So the first question was, in the USA and other parts of the world, perhaps now including the UK, it has been suggested that sex offenders be punished with castration. Do you agree or disagree with this idea, and why? Okay. What I wanted to really talk about in response to this question was, and I hope this is on topic, the background behind like the study behind which has led people to want to castrate sex offenders. Now, I read this study which is called Plasma Testosterone Levels in the Rapist by Richard T. Rada, MD, and Robert Kneller, MD, PhD. And basically in this study they measured the plasma testosterone in 52 rapists and 12 child molesters that were living in a institution for the mentally ill, the dangerously mentally ill. And basically the conclusion that they came to in the end was that although the highly violent rapists that they were investigating, including one who murdered his victim, so that's the level of violence that we're talking about there, more than coercion or force or threat. So though that group had significantly higher mean plasma testosterone levels than whatever they were using as their normal male group and child molesters and the other rapists in the study. Also, the alcoholic rapists, so those with an alcohol problem, had a significantly higher mean plasma testosterone level than non-alcoholic rapists. The pedophiles, interestingly enough, had lower levels than normal men of testosterone. So, but apart from all this, they did find that overall the level of difference between rapists and normal men were very minor. And and then I read the news report, which was from the New York Times science section, and it's called Aggression in Men, Hormone Levels Are a Key, by Daniel Goleman, which was published in 1990. And sorry I'm a bit stilted, I just ate the hugest meal in the universe and I'm so full. But basically the aggression in men, New York Times article, was basically, the conclusion of it was that high testosterone men who are in the middle and upper classes express their need to dominate and compete in ways that are considered in our society to be acceptable. So through business, through climbing management ladders, through making sales, through competing and being the best in their field. They did find that those with high testosterone levels were more likely to be in the lower socioeconomic levels than in the higher, and they put that down to like impulsivity and basically lack of patience. But I think really that the overall conclusion I drew from my research was that I think even though hormones have a massive role to play in behaviour, I don't think they are the be-all and end-all, essentially. I think it is quite possible, obviously I'm not a scientist, I haven't done these studies, but I think it's quite possible that you could find men with testosterone levels of a violent rapist who does not behave in a sexually aggressive manner at all. And in fact, rape, men with high testosterone levels may have higher sex drives, but the eros impulse isn't a negative thing, it's actually a positive, creative thing that can be channeled into positive things. And I'm sure you could find men with really high testosterone levels who are able to channel that into something positive. Now, that being said, there is a condition called XYY. It's like a chromosome abnormality where men are born with an X and two Y chromosomes instead of just the normal one X, one Y. And these men have extremely high testosterone. They also tend to be lower intelligence, so intellectually impaired. And those men they're a very small part of the main population, but they do comprise a much higher proportion of the prisoners who are in jail. So and another thing is, castrating someone who has massive psychological problems and wishes to inflict sexual violence upon others, castration doesn't actually mean someone cannot rape. Men who've been castrated can still get erections and still perform sexually. The only thing that is different is that they may have a slightly lower sex drive, and they don't, when a man has an orgasm, usually that's the end of it, essentially. But because there's no ejaculation of semen, they can continue on. So I don't know. I really don't think that I would support castration. Partly also because sometimes you could have people who are locked up who are not actually guilty of certain crimes, and if that's a permanent change you're making to someone's body, and it'd be terrible if you got the wrong person for a crime and castrated them. So the second question is, there are two forms of castration, chemical and physical. If the law was to implement the use of castration as a punishment, despite your support or otherwise, which form would you support and why? I don't know. I don't think I really support either of them, to tell you the truth, unless the offender actually asked for that therapy themselves. There have actually been some violently sexual men who have actually asked to be castrated. But I don't know if it's ever actually happened yet. There was a serial rapist murderer called John Arthur Shawcross. He had the XYY chromosome abnormality, and he did actually ask, when he was imprisoned, he asked that he be experimented on to find out, what people could do about men like him, and that he be castrated. So obviously in that instance I wouldn't have any objection at all. So I'll answer the next 2 questions in my next video, which are the gender specific questions.